Well, first of all, welcome everybody to the Monday morning training call. You know, we try to mix this up on a weekly basis. And I thought the last couple of weeks were good. I mean, well, they're all good. But sometimes it's not always the details, it's how to proceed. So what I thought I'd do this morning is just take you through a different piece of, you know, really interaction with people. And I mean, this is relevant, whether it be recruiting, whether it be a client question, but, you know, can asking questions be the answer? You know, overcoming concerns or objections is the topic this morning, the first topic anyway. So let's start. You know, maybe you did the 7 magic words. They've seen our video. They agreed to a meeting. You've taken them through an orientation PowerPoint. Now what? You know, or you've done a presentation face-to-face, or maybe they came to a meeting. It doesn't really matter. So the real question is, can asking questions be the answer? Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Your value as a FEG producer or recruiter and the size of your weekly wire transfer into your bank account is determined more by the amount of information you obtain than by the amount of information you present. So let me say that again. Is your value determined more by the amount of information you obtain or than what you present? Clearly, the answer is the information you obtain. Obviously, that's the answer, okay? So if we're getting information from customers, potential prospects, then we're able to answer and deliver on what we're saying, okay? So, you know, when we talk about listening and question techniques, here are some of the negative consequences of not qualifying a prospective FEG partner, okay? And again, it comes into asking questions. We'll get into that, but, you know, wasting time, right? So you waste a lot of time if you're not talking to qualified prospects, whether it be for the business or as a client, okay? Frustration, because you feel like you're doing something and why am I not getting results? You know, hopeful that something good will happen. You know, you didn't qualify the prospect and you're hoping that they buy from you. You believe you have something you don't, and that's a common one. You leave the field, etc., right? So you get frustrated, you back off, you stop creating as much activity. And needless to say, for those of you who remember Wild World of Sports, the agony of defeat, right? And that's what we're trying to avoid in this business. And you can avoid quite a bit of what we just talked about by doing the right things up front. So by giving, the question is it by giving them more information that you get to where you want to get to, or is it by getting more information? Clearly, getting more information is the answer. We can make the best use of our time by qualifying people before we move forward. Qualifying or disqualifying a person is accomplished by gathering information versus giving information. Now, when we say qualifying, I don't want you to take that as it's a certain look of a person, right? We don't know if it's male, female, young, old. The qualifying I'm talking about is that if they're able to move forward with our business or if they're able to become a client, okay? The negative consequences of not qualifying people far outweighs the positive. So here's my point. Is it better to sit with 3 unqualified people or use that time somewhere else? In my opinion, it's use your time somewhere else, because by sitting with 3 people that cannot do your business or that cannot become a client, you wasted some valuable time that you could be spending with somebody else, right? So since we all agreed to the above, why do you think we find it easier to answer questions or respond to a stall or objection by explaining our thoughts on the matter? And I would say it goes back to childhood, right? So let's think about this for a second. We're programmed. Parents are teaching speak when spoken to, right? Mothers, you know, stop asking so many questions or don't make a pest of yourself, right? I mean, as a kid, it's why? And you know what I'm talking about, right? Teachers, now they stroke you for answering a question, right? So they'll put out a question, you raise your hand, you answer the question, good job, Johnny. Well, you know how it works, right? So the reality of it is, if there's, you know, 160 hours in a year, and between the ages of birth through you're 10 years old, right? That's 10 years, that's 87,000 hours minus the 30,000 we spent sleeping. That's 57,000 plus waking hours where you were drilled to answer questions when asked, speak when spoken to, etc., right? So it is natural for us when somebody asks a question for us to give an answer. That kind of brought up that way. We're molded that way in the first 10 years of our life. I think you'd all agree with that, and obviously beyond that as well. So when we look at the common objections we get in this business, here are the common objections, okay? I need to think about it. I don't have any money. I need to talk it over with someone. Can you send me a proposal? That's a common one, right? I don't have the time. Insurance, annuities, I was told were blank. I'm already working with someone. I'm not interested. How come I've never heard of this before? I can do better in the blankety blank market, okay? I believe in buy term and invest the difference. You know, Susie Allman, Dave Ramsey, they say this here. Insurance is too expensive. Now, these are just some of them, but these are the most common ones we tend to hear in this business. And I think for those of you on the webinar this morning that have some experience, I think you'd agree these are some of the common objections we get, right? So the question is, why did they ask? Why do you think they asked or made these statements, right? Well, Susie says because they're confused, right? These are answers we get from the field. Well, Harry said because they really believe what they said. Mikey said they're just working for you. Mel said they're telling you the truth. Lucy said they don't have enough, they don't know enough about FEG's products, right? So these are the reasons people give for why those objections came up. The reality of it is, you know, everyone's a unique human being. In fact, there's over 7 billion people in the world and everybody has their own DNA. Let's face it, with DNA, they can put somebody in jail, right? Because it can identify a unique individual. So how can you possibly know why a person asked a question? See, just because somebody says, well, what about this? That doesn't mean you have enough information to get to them, right? So, and what happens is we assume, we think we know what they're asking, but in reality, we really don't know what they're asking unless we drill down a little bit, right? One could say, you know, peel back the layers of the onion so you understand more where they're really coming from, okay? But the number one problem in sales is it's a society or in general is I-centered behavior and beliefs, right? Everybody's focused on themselves and they're not focused on that prospect. So if you can understand what I'm saying here, if you focused more on the person sitting in front of you than on yourself, you're going to have a lot more results, okay? So the solution is responding to a question or statement with the question. Example, insurance is expensive. Well, you know, Bill, you must have brought that up for a reason. Well, I've looked at it in the past and the quotes were outrageous. I have a lot of bills right now and I'm not sure what I could afford, okay? So let's look at the answer. First, it enables you to discover the reason for the question or statement, the real intent of the statement or question. Secondly, it enables you to gather more information because when reversed, the individual usually will refine or redefine their question, giving you more information. Remember how we qualify and disqualify. Sound a little rough, like maybe the person you're reserving will catch you. First off, the prospect will never see the reverse when they're emotionally involved. So let me go back here for a second. Insurance is expensive. Well, a lot of times people fumble here because, well, how do you answer that, right? But if you say you must have brought that up for a reason, well, I've looked at it in the past and the quotes were outrageous. I have a lot of bills right now and I'm not sure what I can afford. So it's really not that it's expensive, right? I mean, at second glance here, it's really that they're concerned about whether or not they can afford it. That's different than it's expensive, right? Okay, so you can soften statements. You know, I appreciate that. I understand. A good question. You make a good point. I'm glad you asked. Everybody asked that. A lot of people ask that. I see. Well, that sounds important to you. I hear you. Interesting question. That makes sense. See? So here, those are some of the softening statements, and I'll put this into a little bit of a role play for you. So the prospect is Al. Why haven't I heard of this before? So what would be the typical response? Somebody just kind of goes into this long dissertation about, well, blah, blah, and you start giving history when maybe you don't know the real answer yet or the real question yet. So you could say, Mary, good question. Or Mary's answering, good question. You must have brought that up for a reason. Well, yes, I did. I've been looking into insurance items and haven't come across this before. The IUL, right? Index Universal Life, it's a question, right? Yes. Why didn't you? Again, another good question, right? Well, sometime I think my existing guy isn't very bright, so maybe it's him. And they laugh, right? I don't think he even knows I'm still his client because I haven't heard from him in years. Well, that's a totally different meaning than why haven't I heard this before, right? I mean, I think you'd all agree if you kind of go down there and look at the way the Q&A went here, you'll see why haven't I heard this before? You think that's questioning credibility, when in reality he's saying, look, I haven't heard from my agent in years. Now, that's good information to know, right? To know that that agent has not serviced that client. That's an easy in for you to provide better service, right? So how was the objection handled? Well, we gathered more information rather than jumping to answer the question. That's the key point here, gathering more information. The client basically answered his own question, right? So when you really get down to it, what he was really saying is, I haven't heard from my agent in years, and he doesn't, I don't even know if he's still in the business anymore. So that was his real beef, if you will, not why haven't I heard of this, okay? So there's only one person qualified to address the objection. This is a key point, the prospect. See, their data is what's important, not your data. You can talk and talk and talk and talk, but if they aren't buying into it, it doesn't matter what you're saying. But if you're asking questions and they're coming to their own conclusion with your direction, that's a whole lot better. So let's look at some of the what we call intellectual smoke screens. It often takes 3 reverses to get to the real reason, right? So the first is a what, right? That's the intellect, again, the smoke screen. The second is the why behind the what, right? So what's the objection? What's the real why behind the what? And oftentimes it's the emotional reason for the why, how it personally affects them. So we can go back and look at Al and Mary, and we can see that what was, why have I never heard this before? Okay, the why is, about IUL, right? And the emotional reason for it is because my agent, I haven't heard from him in years or months or whatever it is, right? So if you add them together, you get the real reason. So if you can get through 3 qualifying back and forth questions, you can get to the actual answer. Now, if you look at this here, it's a scorecard. Remember, to disqualify or disqualify, we gather information. Well, Al, that was the prospect, had 57 words. Mary had 22 words. So is it more important for you to talk, or is it more important for the client/prospect to talk? Clearly, it's more important for them to talk, okay? Softening statements. So let's put a few together, I appreciate that. You must be telling me that for a reason. Say, so somebody says, wow, whatever, insurance is too expensive. I appreciate that. You must be telling me that for a reason. I understand. Is that a big concern of yours? I don't know if I have the time. I understand. Is that a big concern of yours? Let them drill down, right? See, and that'll continue. You know, that's a good question. Why did you just ask me that just now? Good point. If you were me, what would you do? You know, hey, I'm really busy right now, but I like what I'm hearing. You know, that's a good point. Well, if you were me, what would you do? I'm glad you asked. If we could provide that, what would be the next step? So those are some qualifying questions. By the way, folks, we'll make this recording available. Softening statements, here's continue. Everybody asks that. Why is that important to you? Okay. Hey, you know, I've never heard of living benefits. You know, everybody asks that. Why is that important to you? I see. And you're pointing that out because, okay, I hear you. If you were me, what would you do? See what I'm saying? Interesting question. I'll have to get back to you. Help me. Why did you ask it? So you can see how some of these points just make it easier. As I said earlier, don't be in a rush to answer the question. Try to drill down, you know, again, 3 times. Try to drill down, try to peel back the layers of the onion and find out what the real objection is. Then you can really get to the heart of it, right? So if we're quick to answer the question, it can make it more difficult, right? I need to think about it. I appreciate that. You must have brought that up for a reason. I don't have any money. I see. You must have brought that up for a reason. You see, you can say that all the time. I need to talk it over with someone. I understand. You must have brought that up for a reason. Can you send me a proposal? Well, that makes sense. You must have brought that up for a reason. A lot of people, I don't have the time. A lot of people say that. You must have brought that up for a reason. See? You see how it's so easy to add the two together? Interesting. You must have brought that up for a reason. Now, you may not want to say that 5 times in a row, okay? But, you know, change it up a little bit. But I think you're getting the point here where a lot of times we're so quick to just answer the question again. That comes back to our program. You know, somebody asks you a question and your natural tendency is to answer it. Nothing wrong with that. However, if you can make this paradigm shift and understand that, is that really a question or is it deeper than that? Okay, and that's what we need to find out. I'm already working with someone. I hear you, and you've brought that up for a reason. I'm not interested. So it's over? You're not interested? How come I've never heard of this before? I hear that a lot, and you must have brought that up for a reason. I can do better in the stock market. I appreciate that. You must have brought that up for a reason. And see, then they'll keep talking, right? I believe in buy term and invest the difference. Well, help me understand. You must have brought that up for a reason. Insurance is too expensive. I appreciate that. You must have brought that up for a reason. Can you see the trend here? Is you're acknowledging their question, but then you're asking them to redefine it without saying that, right? So other reverses is start and stop, okay? So in other words, you start and then you kind of pause and then they'll kind of answer some more. You know, suppose I could, and you get into it, right? If you were me, what would you do? Let me see if I have this straight. Ask me a question. Why did you ask, right? Off the record, let's pretend. Houston, we have a problem. Any ideas? See, these are other reverses just to kind of get it on track, get them talking a little bit more. George, you're rounding third base. I'm still on the on-deck circle. Can we back up a little bit? Right? So sometimes you're talking to somebody and you ever notice this and they're kind of like way ahead of you. Like you're in this moment, but they're asking you a question that really would pertain to what you have coming up. So that's kind of a funny one, right? Hey, you're rounding third base. I'm still in the on-deck circle. Can we back up a little bit, right? So get him back to the moment and try to find out what he's really asking, okay? So the new way gathering information is the key. Take copious notes in their words. Don't be afraid to say that's a new one. I'll have to get back to you on that. You should always have a little pad handy when you're talking to somebody, whether it be on the phone, whether it be on a join me or Zoom type meeting, or whether you're face to face. You should always take notes, because see, when they see you write something down that they said, that shows them that what they're asking is real important. Okay. Your job is really to gather information and bring it back to the team and go back with recommendations. So in other words, if you're talking to somebody and you're kind of new at this here and you don't have all the answers, and look, you're not expected to, all you have to do is, again, take notes. Don't be afraid to say that's a new one. I'll get back to you. Okay. Now, when you're behind the scenes, that's when all the strategy comes into play. You don't want to necessarily do that in front of the prospect, right? Slow down. Salespeople as a group go too fast. They think they need to have an answer to every question. You really don't. What you need to do is understand where they're coming from, okay? Pause when you're interacting with the prospect. Take a second to pause and gather your thoughts and respond appropriately. The most important thing here is make sure they finish their point. Sometimes, and I've done this myself, okay, and I catch myself occasionally and I work at it. Somebody is talking to you, or they're bringing a point up, and you're kind of like nodding your head and your lips appear to want to stop to move, because you want to answer it, like almost interrupt them and answer. Let them finish their thought. Just listen patiently, wait till they've completed their thought, and then answer. Because it shows you are really listening to the question and you are not like on auto mode, with your answer, okay? So anyway, hopefully that was helpful to you today. I kind of went through that a little quick, but of course we'll have this on video. We'll put this up in the back office. It's important. We're in the people business more than anything. Everybody thinks yes, we're in the financial business. That is what we do. But in reality, we are definitely in the people business. And it's important for you to understand the way people respond to things, okay? And asking questions can help you so much in the recruiting process, if you just drill down and, as I said, peel back those layers of the onion and you kind of get to the underlying point, right? Like if somebody says, well, I don't have the time right now. Well, geez, you must have brought that up for a reason. Well, yeah, I'm kind of working a lot, and I've had to take on more hours to make more money. Okay, so think about where that's going, right? Well, geez, I hear you. I understand. In fact, I hear that a lot. So the solution is to that, and then let them keep talking. And eventually, they'll probably recruit themselves. Now, this refers to clients too. Okay, I'm talking about prospecting here from a perspective of the best lead generation program we'll ever have is a new person in their natural market, right? So that's why I bring that up.